Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Daniel,
We are the hosts of the EVLC podcast.
where we interview people that are making a positive impact in the world.
Welcome back to the EVLC podcast. Today we are interviewing Mr. Nick. He is a middle school and high school teacher, and he was previously a professional opera singer.
Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, guys. Great to see both of you.
Speaking on being a teacher, what made you decide to become a teacher overall?
Yeah, it's a really good question. If I'm thinking back to when I was in high school, I kind of always had this thought in the back of my head that I would become a teacher. I knew that I wanted to go into music. As you guys said at the beginning of the program, my first career was in classical music as an opera singer. Um, And in my head, I was going to eventually transition that into being a music teacher, a voice teacher. But as I got on with my career and realized this wasn't something I wanted to do long term, the first thing that my head turned to was, hey, you've always kind of wanted to be a teacher. Let's revisit that. To dig in a little more, I love working with young people. Didn't know that when I was a kid, you don't know that until you're older. I'm a total geek when it comes to history and looking at certain science topics, psychology. I love talking to people about interesting concepts, and you get to do that all the time as a teacher. And one of the most rewarding things in my life, maybe the most rewarding thing in my life, is getting to help young people realize what their talents are and connect those to how to benefit their life.
Okay.
So, what was your dream job when you were a kid?
What was my dream job when I was a kid? So, first thing I ever remember saying that I wanted to do when I was 4, and all the boys on the playground wanted to be firefighters. So that was my dream job when I was 4 years old. Once I actually started thinking for myself a little bit more, I didn't know. Like when I was in middle school, I had no idea. Once I got into high school and started really getting involved in performing, especially in my local community outside of school, I wanted to be a musical theater singer. I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to be getting that positive energy that I got when people applauded me for a job well done. That's what I wanted to do.
Wow. So you were an opera singer, right?
I think I told Stephanie in the little blurb I sent her before this that
Uh-huh.
I've been performing since I was 10. Um, and I'd started singing classical music when I first started taking voice lessons at 15. And I didn't get from that point. Yeah, I started making money on it when I was 16, going to competitions, winning some competitions, and stopped doing it professionally when I was 33, 37 now.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay. So you really enjoyed that whole thing? What's the contrast between being a teacher and an opera singer? Because obviously there's a big difference, but I'm sure
Huge
there's.
difference. Yeah. The main difference that I feel every day is that when you're a teacher, you've got regular hours that you're working, right? I've got to be in the classroom
Uh-huh.
at a certain time every day, and people leave at a certain time every day. Whereas as a performer, it's kind of more loosey goosey. I could wake
Uh-huh.
up as late as I wanted most days. Not that that's healthy, not that I recommend that, but the schedule was less concrete, right?
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but one of the reasons that I got out of it ultimately is because the pay is also less concrete.
Uh-huh.
If you're in a performance or in a show, you know that you're going to be working for a certain length of time, usually 4 to 6 months on a single opera or musical, and you're making good money while you're in that show. But then when it's over, you have to have another job lined up. And if you don't, you're not making money. Whereas as a teacher, I'm salaried. I know I'm getting a paycheck every month, and you can depend on that. So a little different.
Okay. I could see it now. I could see the differences. I was gonna also ask, like, what was your first job, even before that? And like, what were the main takeaways that you learned from it? Because I'm sure everybody has like their original first job, whether it's like a convenience store or something else, but and they take away little lessons from it. So I was just curious, like, what did you learn, and what was it?
Totally. So my very my very first job was when I was 16. My friends and I all wanted to get a summer job, and we were really passionate about changing the world because we grew up in a pretty conservative town and we wanted to see things mixed up. And so we found Greenpeace as an organization down in Hillcrest. They had offices down there at the time. They may still, which is, an organization that is very concerned with environmental matters. And so we went down there. We're like, hey, we want to work for Greenpeace. What do you have for us? And they're like, great. We hire people all the time. We want you to stand on the corner every day and try to get people to buy subscriptions to this magazine. We're like, that doesn't sound very exciting, but okay, fine, we'll do it. It lasted for a week. And I don't know if Daniel, you've ever had a job like this where they want you to get people to buy a certain amount of something. They want you to have something
Uh,
called a quota. And if you
like a
don't meet
sales, like a
sales
sales
goal,
type job. Yeah.
yeah, they want you to have a sales goal. And if you don't meet that goal, you get fired. And so that's what happened to all of us after a week.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I guess, let's see. Oh, my takeaways from that first job. Um, research the job that you research the job before you get into it. Know what you're getting
Of
yourself
course.
into. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, know what you want to get out of a job before you start that process. Yeah. Because if you can go in armed with knowing who you are, what your strengths are, and what you want, you're better positioned to get it.
Exactly. And like I could understand how stressful a job like that is. If you choose the wrong job, like a quota job maybe for some people may be super like, stressful. So it just
Some
depends. You have
people
to really.
love it. Some
Yeah,
people
I'm
really love
sure.
it. But yeah, for me, I don't like selling things. I like being honest with people, and you can't really do that as a salesman.
Yeah, it's like you almost have to be kind of like aggressive when you're selling.
Right.
So, yeah.
So, can you tell us something interesting about yourself most people don't know?
Something interesting about myself that most people don't know. I don't know how interesting this is, so I'll try it on for
Mhm.
size. I am, when I'm teaching, really animated and I'm talking to people all the time. And I'm keeping the energy high and trying to make things as fun as possible. But when I go home, I'm a pretty quiet person. I'm an introvert. I pretend to be an extrovert. Um, and I would not have been able to do that if I didn't have a performance background. That's really when I learned to come out of my shell and not be so shy. Let's see, something else interesting. I am, God, you guys, don't ask somebody in their late 30s what's interesting about them anymore. Let's see. Oh, I'm a big Roman history buff. That's my favorite thing to study in middle school, high school, and today. Love it.
Re- So wait, I was gonna ask, what subjects do you teach exactly?
Yeah, so my teaching credential is in social science, which is history,
Oh,
government. Um, but at our school, all of our students only have one teacher. And so that teacher has to be responsible for helping them on all of their subjects: history, math, English, science. When people take a driver's ed elective, I have to make
oh
sure that I'm able to help
wow.
with stuff like that. It's a major challenge. And it's not like if you're coming from a traditional school, we're not teaching a group of 30 kids one subject for an hour a day and then they move on to the next one. People are mostly working at home on their own classes at their own pace. And then when they have questions or when they're struggling, on an assignment, that's when I jump in and say, hey, let's look at this together. Let's see where you are right now and how I can get you to where you want to be going.
So you kind of have to know a little bit about everything then.
Yeah, you have to know a little bit about everything. Really, the most time that I spend working with people on subjects is around the areas of math and English. When they're writing essays, I'm very hands-on with that because writing is a critical skill.
Mhm.
It's hard to imagine. There are some fields that you don't really need to know how to be a writer, but most of them, especially now that a lot of our communication is digital, you have to know how to write well. Even if you're not writing articles or essays as an adult, you have to know how to communicate effectively through writing. So that's something I pay a lot of attention to. And math is a difficult subject for most people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I
So
don't like
that's
math.
been, well, I'm curious, why don't you like math?
The reason why I don't like math. So I'm a business major. I'm in like I go to a Cal State and I was gonna say so I'm taking economics right now, right? I'm on a high level economics class right now. It's called it has economics and calculus.
Ooh,
So I do not think those two mix. It's just maybe my opinion or not. But that's one of the reasons why I currently do not enjoy it. But I would say if I were to choose any math, I feel like geometry would probably be my strong suit.
interesting. That was my favorite sort of niche in math when I was in high school as well. Algebra, I was okay in algebra, but once we got to geometry, I was so interested because
Uh-huh.
I'll tell you why it was for me. See if this is the same for you. Algebra is very abstract. It's hard to wrap our head around what we're doing when we're trying to balance out an equation, solve for x. What is x? Why am I trying to solve for x? But then once you get into geometry, you're like, oh, I can imagine looking at a building with different shapes attached and needing to know the surface area if I was going to build that thing. That's valuable stuff. It helps
Yeah.
us to be able to look at geometry and see an easy connection between that and the world outside of the classroom, which ultimately, as a teacher, is my number one goal. How do I take what we're focusing on right now and translate that into real terms to the world outside the classroom, your own life, and where you want to go? That's where the magic of teaching really happens.
Yeah, I agree. It's just calculus is a different beast of a math class. It's tough.
It is. I never had to take calculus, so Godspeed.
I was gonna ask you also, like, was there ever a point like when you became a teacher, or like maybe along the way of becoming a teacher, where like you felt you failed at something, or you felt an ounce of failure for a second?
So I am going to keep being real with you guys. I feel
Mm-hmm.
a blend of success and failure every single day in this job. Um, I don't know if other I don't know if other professions are impacted in this same way. So I won't compare anything, but as a teacher, I have I have 41 students on my roster that I'm responsible
Mm-hmm.
for. Um, I don't care who you are as a teacher. Every teacher knows you're not going to be able to help all of your students in the way that they need it. You're only one person. And so if I have 10 people that come on any given day, I am only one human being. Um, I can only do so much. And when I started going into teaching, we all have these grand plans, right? I'm going to be the person who never looks back and feels failure, right? I'm going to figure out this magical formula. It has to exist for reaching every student and making them, helping them reach the ultimate version of themselves. But you quickly realize that that is an impossible goal. And so that shifts to figuring out, okay, with my limited energy, with my limited time, with my limited knowledge, and with my limited wellspring of compassion, to be very honest, what am I able to do with the people who are right in front of me right now? Where can I reach the most people in the biggest way? And every single day, someone is not being reached by me that I want to reach. So, unfortunately, the answer to your question is every day I feel some measure of failure. It's just a matter of not letting that get to you and taking those experiences, saying, okay, I didn't reach this kid today. What can I try to do for them tomorrow? Or if I have no idea, how can I rethink my relationship with them so that I can do something for them by the time that they leave me?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
now I have a fun question. If you won $10 million tomorrow, what would you spend it on?
Wow, that is such a good question. Oh God, that's such a good question. Huh. If I won $10 million tomorrow, I would spend it on nothing because I would be so overwhelmed I wouldn't know what to do with it. Immediate concerns, I would finish out the school year, but I'd have to rethink my life because that is a lot of money. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and now that I understand money a little better, if you have $10 million, you want to keep that growing. I'd figure this is going to be boring, you guys, at first at least. I would figure out how to invest it so that that $10 million could turn into $100 million. And then I'd figure out, after my family's needs were met, where do I feel like that money could do the most good? And ultimately, right now, climate change would probably be where I would be putting that money.
Okay. That sounds good. Another kind of fun-ish question. I was gonna ask, like, if you could teach us something, like, since you know a lot about history, I want you to like tell us some interesting facts or like teach us, you know?
Okay. The first thing that comes to mind is, okay, we're going to keep this fun and snappy, right? So
All right.
the Roman Empire existed in a lot of different governmental forms. It wasn't always an empire, but once it transitioned to an empire, you had this situation where one person is leading this enormous government, and they didn't get that job because they were well suited for it, right? It's just kind of whoever is the next person to come into the family line gets to be in charge of everything. And so you had a situation where you had some really great emperors and some really awful emperors. Um, my favorite Roman emperor is somebody who, if television had existed, if elections had existed, never would have made it into office. But he was one of the most successful emperors ever. His name was Claudius. And he was, we don't know because this is about 2,000 years ago, but he was probably some form of autistic, may have had some form of Down syndrome, had some kind of limitation that made the population, his own family, really think that he was stupid, ugly, and a miserable person to be around. He became emperor and he killed it. He did so great. He reformed the legal system. He gave slaves more rights over how they were treated by their masters. What else did he do? This isn't so great. He conquered Britain, which Julius Caesar, one of the greatest military leaders of all time, was not able to do. And he was a great writer. He loved writing poetry and writing history, and I love hearing stories about people like this who, in the modern age, we have the situation where we're starting to see people with certain forms of disability be successful. We're allowing them space for this. This is one of the few people who in ancient history was able to shine and show what they could do, even though society didn't really want them to do. that's one of my favorite like little pieces of Roman history.
That's very inspiring, actually.
It's pretty cool. He was an awesome guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one final question. How are
Okay.
you making the world a better place?
How am I making the world a better place? Okay. So both of you are clearly people who care about making the world a better place, right? This is something where when we're young, we have the energy for it. Hold on to that energy. Once you become an adult, you've probably heard this before. Once you become an adult, it is hard to hold on to that energy. It is hard to hold on to that energy because you have so many responsibilities and you realize that your ability to change the world is more limited than you thought it was going to be when you were younger. Um, so the way that I am making the world a better place, if I'm allowed to say that, and when I stop and really look at myself, I have to say that, yes, I agree with you, and thank you very much, Stephanie. Um, I am choosing to continue to believe that what I am doing matters. And I'll tell you the number one thing that helps me keep doing that is because I have students like you and a few others that tell me when I do something that helps them, they tell me. And so I get that energy back from them. And it helps remind me that, yes, what I am doing matters. So I'm helping students who otherwise would not be succeeding get through high school. I'm helping people who otherwise would be dropping out and not who would struggle to find financial security in life get to the place where they are able to re-envision their futures. I'm helping people feel confident about their ability to take control over their own lives. I'm so grateful that I get to do that.
Yeah, that's a huge difference. You're making a huge difference, actually, even though it doesn't seem like it. It really is. Inspiring all these kids, you know?
Well, thank you very much,
Like,
Daniel. Some days it does feel like that. Some days it does. It's important for us to remind ourselves on the hard days that tomorrow is a different day. And we don't know how we're impacting people. We just don't. I have talked to so many people, and it comes up again and again and again, especially in our field. We reach so many people at the same time. Very few young people actually talk to teachers about how their lives have been impacted by them. Um, I have one, oh, this will be my last thought because I think we have to go. My favorite teacher that I ever had was my 10th grade teacher, who was just this big ball of love and energy. She took us out of the classroom all the time. We went on interesting field trips. She was so impactful on my ideas of what a teacher could be and why it's important to unconditionally love every single one of my students. I didn't tell her how much she meant to me until I was an adult. And it came as a surprise because I was kind of a jerk when I was 10 years old. I was not the nicest kid to have in the classroom. Um,
mhm.
yeah, so if I have one thought that I would leave to people who want to change the world is try to hold on to that positive energy. Even if you're not getting it returned, you don't know what impact you're making. If you're putting positive energy out in the world, even if you're not seeing it returned, it is being appreciated by someone and you are making a difference.
Wow. Well, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Nick, for doing this. And it's been a pleasure having you on this. And
Thank you to you both. It was great. This will be the highlight of my day for sure. I appreciate both of your time.
all right.